Saad lived in a small but clean house at the edge of the city. Every morning she woke up before the sun rose. She swept the floor, washed her face, and prepared for the long day ahead. Her life was simple and she liked it that way. She believed that peace came from hard work and honesty. Even though she did not have much money, she always found a reason to smile. Saad worked at a local tailoring shop where she helped sew clothes for people in the neighborhood. The pay was not much, but she took pride in every stitch she made. Customers trusted her because she was careful and kind. When she finished work each day, her hands were tired, but her heart felt full. She believed that effort always mattered even if no one praised it. Bizi, her best friend, lived a very different life. Bizi stayed in a large house with high gates and shiny cars parked outside. She never worried about food, rent, or bills. Her life was full of parties, expensive clothes, and people who laughed loudly around her. Many admired her beauty and confidence. Wherever she went, people noticed her. Saad and Bizi met many years ago when they were still young. They attended the same school and sat next to each other in class. Saad was quiet and focused, while Bizi was bold and playful. At first, people wondered how they became friends since they were so different. But somehow they understood each other in a way no one else did. Saad listened more than she spoke and Bizi loved to talk. Bizi enjoyed telling stories about her travels, her family's wealth, and the places she hoped to visit next. Saad listened with interest, never feeling jealous. She believed that everyone had their own path in life. Even though Bizi had everything, she often complained. She complained about boring parties, slow drivers, and people who did not meet her standards. Saad noticed this but never judged her. She simply smiled and offered gentle words. She believed that friendship meant patience. When they spent time together, Bizi often chose where they went and what they did. If Saad suggested something simple, Bizi laughed and changed the plan. Saad did not argue. She was used to adjusting. In her mind, keeping peace was better than winning an argument. Bizi liked Saad because she was loyal. No matter how busy or tired Saad was, she always made time for her friend. When Bizi called late at night, Saad answered. When Bizi needed help, Saad showed up. Bizi enjoyed this attention, but she rarely thought about how much effort Saad put into the friendship. Sometimes, Bizi would forget her wallet and expect Saad to pay for small things. Other times she would arrive late without saying sorry. These moments were small but they happened often. Saad noticed them but she stayed silent. She believed that people showed their true selves over time. Despite everything, Saad truly cared for Bizi. She remembered the days when Bizi defended her at school and shared her lunch without being asked. Those memories mattered to her. She believed that deep down, Bizi was not a bad person, just someone who had never faced hardship. Bizi, on the other hand, believed life would always be easy. She thought money could fix every problem and that people would always be there for her. She did not think much about tomorrow. She lived in the moment, trusting her comfort to last forever. When Saad visited Bizi's house, she felt out of place. The rooms were big and quiet and everything looked expensive. Bizi moved through the space without care, tossing bags on chairs and leaving dishes behind. To her, these things were normal. To Saad, they felt heavy with meaning. Bizi often joked about how simple Saada's life was. She did not mean to hurt her, but her words sometimes carried a sharp edge. Saad laughed along even when it stung. She believed that friendship required understanding even when it was difficult. At night, when Saad lay on her small bed, she sometimes thought about her friendship with Bizi. She wondered if Bizi truly saw her or if she only enjoyed her presence because it was easy. These thoughts stayed quiet in her heart. She never spoke them out loud. Still, Saad woke up each day with hope. She believed that people could grow and change. She believed that kindness always returned in some form. Her life was not loud or bright, but it was steady and real. Bizi continued her life of comfort, unaware of how fragile it truly was. She laughed freely, spent carelessly, and trusted that tomorrow would look just like today. She never imagined a life where things could be taken away. The two friends stood side by side in the same city, living in different worlds. One valued effort and patience, while the other relied on ease and comfort. Neither of them knew that their lives were slowly moving toward a turning point that would test their friendship in ways they could never expect. For now, they were still best friends. One quiet, one bold. One careful, one careless. And though everything seemed normal on the surface, change was quietly waiting just ahead. Bizi's life had always felt endless and easy. She woke up each morning in her large house, sunlight spilling through tall windows, and she believed nothing could ever change. She moved through life with confidence, laughter, and little worry. But life has a way of surprising even the most certain people. One small decision, a choice made without much thought, began to change everything. It started with a business deal. Beezy had trusted someone she barely knew, someone who promised big returns and effortless profits. The person seemed convincing, dressed well, spoke smoothly, and smiled in the way that made people want to believe them. Beezy, used to quick results and simple wins, did not check the details. She signed papers, handed over large amounts of money, and expected things to turn out exactly as promised. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Her days went on with the usual rhythm: shopping, brunches with friends, and trips to the spa. She laughed and joked about how her life was so easy, how lucky she was to never have to worry. But then small things began to show that the deal was not what it seemed. Payments were delayed, emails went unanswered, and meetings were suddenly cancelled. Beezy grew worried but still believed it was just a minor problem. She thought it would fix itself as it always did. Then came the shocking news: the deal had failed completely. The money she had trusted to grow her wealth had vanished. Every expectation, every plan she had counted on, disappeared in a blink. It was not just money, it was her reputation too. People she had called friends started keeping their distance, some whispering behind her back. Her phone, once full of messages and invitations, became quiet. The reality hit her like a heavy wave she could not escape. At first, Beezy refused to believe it. She tried calling the person who had made the deal, hoping for an explanation, but the calls went straight to voicemail. She went to her friends, thinking they would help, but many avoided her gaze or quickly made excuses. Some even laughed at her, secretly enjoying the drama she had created. It was a world she had never seen before, a world where people did not stay by her side simply because she was rich. For the first time in her life, Beezy felt fear. She wandered through her empty house, looking at the walls that had always made her feel powerful and safe. Now they felt cold and uninviting. Every shiny object, every expensive decoration, reminded her of what she had lost. She had thought wealth meant safety, but she learned that people's loyalty could vanish in a single day. Beezy tried to hold on to her pride. She told herself that she would bounce back, that she could call someone else, make another deal, or borrow money. But each attempt failed. Doors she thought would always be open were now firmly closed. People she had laughed with now treated her as if she were invisible. She realized that in all her life of comfort, she had never truly known who valued her for herself, not her money. Days turned into weeks, and the reality became unavoidable. She could not pay for her staff, and one by one they left. Her cars were sold. The banks began calling. Even her favorite cafe, where the owner had always smiled and waved at her, asked her to pay or leave. She began to understand that her wealth had been a shield, and now that shield was gone. Beezy felt loneliness in a way she had never experienced before. She called people who used to invite her to gatherings, but no one returned her calls. She went to her parents, hoping for support, but they were busy with their own lives and only offered polite words. It was not the comfort she expected. The world felt harsh, and the people she trusted seemed fragile. Her friends from school and college, people who had once envied her lifestyle, suddenly acted as if they did not know her. Invitations to parties stopped. Messages on social media slowed until they disappeared. Even the people who had laughed at her jokes, admired her clothes, or followed her updates vanished. She felt invisible and small, a feeling completely foreign to her. Beezy wandered through her empty rooms, feeling the weight of every mistake she had made. She realized how careless she had been, how much she had relied on appearances, status, and money. She had never thought about what would happen if those things were gone. She had never thought about real friends, real work, or real effort. Now she was forced to face the truth. One night, as she sat alone in her vast house, she reflected on her life. She thought about Saad, her best friend who had always been patient, hardworking, and kind. Saad had never cared about money or status. She had stayed loyal even when Beezy had taken her kindness for granted. Beezy felt a pang of guilt. She realized that she had never truly appreciated her friend, assuming that Saad would always be there no matter what. The next morning, Beezy left her house. She did not have anywhere to go, no one to call. Her clothes felt heavy on her shoulders. The luxury she had taken for granted no longer mattered. She walked through the streets she once traveled in fancy cars, now on foot, noticing the small details she had ignored before. Cracked sidewalks, old buildings, and people moving quickly to work. She had been shielded from this world her whole life, and now it was unavoidable. Beezy went to the market looking for small jobs to earn some money. She offered to help carry goods or clean small stalls. People looked at her strangely, not used to seeing someone dressed in expensive clothes doing simple work. She felt embarrassed, but she had no choice. She realized that wealth had hidden her from reality, and now she could no longer hide. The first days were the hardest. Her hands, and used to hard work, became sore. Her feet, and used to long walks, became tired. She learned to wait in lines, to bargain, to face rejection. Each small task reminded her of how much she had taken for granted. She felt frustrated, angry, and ashamed all at once. But slowly, a new understanding began to grow inside her. She saw life in a way she had never seen before, noticing the effort people put in to survive and to live honestly. One evening, exhausted from a day of walking and working, Beezy thought of Saad again. She remembered the quiet house, the careful work, the way Saad always smiled even when life was hard. She realized that Saad had strength that she had never admired properly. She realized that true power was not in money or fame but in patience, kindness, and honesty. Beezy understood that she needed help, but she had to ask the right person. She could no longer rely on wealth or connections. She needed someone who would guide her, who would show her how to live without pretending, without pride, and without shortcuts. Only one person came to her mind: Saad. Her heart pounded as she considered reaching out. She feared rejection, but she had no other choice. The next morning she picked up her phone and sent a simple message: Saad, can I come see you? I need your help. She waited nervously, checking her phone every few minutes. Hours passed. Finally a reply appeared: Come. I'll help. The words were short, but they carried a warmth she had never experienced in her recent days. Beezy packed a small bag, the few clothes she had left, and left her empty house for the last time. She felt a mix of fear and hope, realizing that her life had changed forever. She had fallen from wealth, from comfort, from everything she thought defined her. But in that fall she had found the first chance to learn, to grow, and to rebuild. As she walked toward Sada's home, she thought about the lessons she had learned. Money could disappear, friends could leave, and pride could be shattered. But kindness, patience, and loyalty were rare treasures that could not be bought or lost easily. She had ignored these for too long, but now she was ready to see them clearly. Beezy arrived at Sada's small house, nervous and uncertain. Saad opened the door and smiled, welcoming her in without a word of judgment. Beezy felt tears fill her eyes. She realized that true friendship did not depend on wealth or status. True friendship could survive mistakes, failures, and hardships. She had lost everything but gained the one thing that mattered most: a chance to learn, to change, and to rebuild her life with honesty. Beezy's fall had been hard, painful, and humiliating in ways she could not describe. But it had also been necessary. She understood that life was more than wealth, comfort, or admiration. Life was about effort, patience, respect, and the people who stood by you when everything else disappeared. And for the first time, Beezy felt a deep, honest gratitude for the friend she had always taken for granted. Beezy had never felt so small in her life. The large gates, shiny cars, and expensive furniture she had taken for granted were gone. She stood at the doorstep of Sada's small house, holding a bag with the few things she had left. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had lost almost everything, and now for the first time she had to depend on someone else. Not her money, not her status, but someone she had always considered a friend. Saad opened the door with a warm smile. Her eyes were gentle, but they held a quiet strength. Beezy, she said softly, come in. You are safe here. Beezy stepped inside, noticing the small but tidy home. Everything had a purpose and everything was cared for. The air smelled faintly of soap and fresh cooking. Beezy felt a pang of guilt. She had lived in luxury and never understood the effort it took to maintain even a small home like this. Saad led her to a chair and gestured for her to sit. I know things are hard right now, Saad said, but I can help you. You can stay here, eat and rest. There is one thing I need from you though. Beezy tilted her head, curiosity mixed with nervousness. What is that? She asked. Sada's voice was calm but firm. I need you to help me with the house. Simple chores like cooking, cleaning, and washing dishes. You will stay here, but I need you to share the work. Life is not always easy, Beezy, and this is a chance for you to learn. Beezy blinked in surprise. She had expected kindness, yes, but she had not expected this. She thought of her old life, where people worked for her, cooked for her, and cleaned for her. The idea that she would now have to do such things herself was shocking. But she had no choice. Her pride fought with her need, and eventually need won. Okay, she said quietly, I'll do it. The first day was more difficult than Beezy imagined. She tried to sweep the floor, but the broom felt awkward in her hands. She scrubbed the dishes, but the soap seemed sticky, and the water burned her fingers more than she expected. Cooking was even harder. She had never paid attention to ingredients, portions, or timing. Saad watched patiently, guiding her through each step. Not like that, Saad said gently. You need to rinse the vegetables first. Then chop them carefully. Don't rush. Beezy nodded, embarrassed that she was making mistakes in front of her friend. She had always been praised for everything she did before, and now she felt clumsy and slow. By the evening, Beezy's arms ached, her back was sore, and her hands smelled of soap and food. She looked around at the clean kitchen and the neatly swept floor and felt a strange sense of pride. It was not the same pride she had felt when buying expensive clothes or attending parties. This pride was quieter, but it felt real. She had done something not for money or praise but simply because it was needed. Saad prepared a small dinner and they sat together at the table. Beezy hesitated before picking up her fork. She had never eaten a meal she had prepared herself in this way. It tasted simple, but it was comforting. She realized that the effort behind every bite was more meaningful than any fancy meal she had eaten in the past. Saad smiled at her silently, seeing the small changes in her friend's expression. The next days followed a similar pattern. Beezy woke up early, helped with chores, and slowly learned the rhythm of Saada's life. She swept, dusted, washed clothes, and cooked simple meals. At first, every task felt exhausting, and she complained silently in her mind. She missed her soft beds, her endless closets, her waiting staff, and the ease of her old life. But slowly she began to notice the satisfaction in completing tasks. Sweeping the floor no longer felt impossible, it felt like an accomplishment. Washing dishes became less annoying as she learned techniques to make the work easier. Cooking began to feel creative as she experimented with seasoning and timing. Each day she gained a little confidence in her abilities, though she still stumbled occasionally. Saad never criticized her harshly, she offered guidance with patience, and Beezy slowly began to respect her friend in a way she had never before. One afternoon, Saad asked Beezy to help hang the laundry outside. The sun was warm and the air smelled of fresh grass. Beezy struggled to pin the clothes, fumbling with the clothespins and dropping some on the ground. She laughed nervously, feeling awkward. "This is harder than it looks," she admitted. Saad laughed softly. "Yes, it is," she said, "but you're learning. That's what matters." Beezy realized how much she had underestimated simple work. She had always believed that being rich meant life would be easy, that someone else would handle the details, the cleaning, the cooking, and even the small decisions. Now she understood that effort mattered, that taking care of even small things required patience, care, and attention. She began to notice Saad in new ways. The quiet strength it took to manage a home, to work, to maintain patience and kindness, impressed her. She had never truly looked at Saad before, always seeing her as just the quiet best friend. Now she realized Saada's life was not easy, but it was filled with dignity, care, and skill. Evenings became times of reflection for Beezy. She would sit quietly after chores, thinking about how her life had been so different. She had spent so many years surrounded by comfort and admiration, yet she had learned little about effort or responsibility. The fall from wealth had been painful, but it had opened her eyes. Beezy also began to appreciate the small joys Saad had always taken for granted. A clean floor, a neatly arranged room, a meal prepared with care. These were simple, yet they held meaning. She began to understand that life was not about appearances or money, but about doing what needed to be done and respecting the work behind it. As the days went by, Beezy felt a strange mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. She was embarrassed that she had never learned these skills, never respected them. She was grateful that Saad had offered her a safe place, guidance, and patience. Saada's kindness was quiet but powerful. It reminded Beezy that friendship and care could be more important than wealth and status. Beezy started waking up earlier not because she had to, but because she wanted to do her part. She swept the floors before Saad woke up, washed a few dishes after breakfast, and started planning meals for the evening. She discovered that she liked the rhythm of a day filled with simple tasks, where each small accomplishment mattered. One morning, as Beezy hung clothes to dry, she looked around the small yard and realized how peaceful it felt. There were no crowds, no noise from parties, no pressure to impress anyone. For the first time she felt calm. She understood that comfort and luxury could not bring her this kind of peace. Only effort, care, and honesty could. Saad noticed the changes too. She saw Beezy trying harder, learning faster, and taking pride in work she had once thought beneath her. Saad smiled quietly, realizing that this was more than chores. This was Beezy's first step toward understanding life differently, toward appreciating hard work and humility. Beezy also started noticing how the neighbors treated Saad with respect. They greeted her warmly, asked for small favors, and trusted her completely. Beezy realized that respect was earned, not bought, and she had never understood that before. She saw Saada's patience, honesty, and skill reflected in the way others interacted with her. At night, after a long day of work, Beezy would sit quietly and reflect on her old life. She thought about her friends who had abandoned her, her old house, and her lost wealth. She realized how fragile her previous life had been. Money and luxury had shielded her from reality, but they had not prepared her for life's true challenges. Slowly she began to embrace the new routine. She no longer dreaded chores. Instead, she found satisfaction in completing them. She laughed when she dropped a dish or made a mistake in cooking. She asked Saad for advice and followed it carefully. She started taking responsibility for herself in a way she had never done before. Beezy also discovered a new side of herself. She had patience she never knew existed, resilience to continue even when tired, and a sense of humility that had been absent in her wealthy life. She realized that character was more important than appearances, that effort mattered more than status, and that friendship was stronger than money. Saad continued to guide her gently, never scolding, only showing the way. Beezy learned not just how to clean or cook, but how to value small achievements and take pride in honest effort. She began to see herself differently, not as a rich person who could buy happiness, but as someone capable of real work, learning, and growth. Beezy's first week in Saada's house ended with a simple meal, laughter over small mistakes, and quiet conversation. She felt tired, yes, but also satisfied in a way she had never felt at a party or in a shopping mall. She realized that life's richness was not in money, but in doing, learning, and caring. She also began to understand the meaning of real friendship. Saad had welcomed her, guided her, and given her a chance without judgment. Beezy realized she had taken that friendship for granted for years. Now she felt a deep sense of gratitude and a desire to become better, not just for herself but to honor the kindness of her friend. For the first time in a long while, Beezy felt hope. She had lost everything she once valued, but she had gained something far more important: understanding, respect, humility, and the chance to rebuild her life. She no longer saw chores as punishment. She saw them as lessons, steps toward becoming a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate person. And though her hands ached, her back was sore, and her pride had been humbled, Beezy felt a quiet joy she had never known. She realized that this was only the beginning of a long journey, but for the first time she was ready to walk it, step by step, with patience, humility, and the guidance of a friend who had never abandoned her. Days passed slowly, yet each day brought Beezy new lessons. The first week at Saada's house had been a struggle, filled with awkwardness and embarrassment, but now she was beginning to adjust. She woke up early each morning, greeted the small chirping birds outside, and helped Saad with the household chores. Cooking, cleaning, washing, and organizing had once seemed beneath her, almost laughable, but now she found herself moving through these tasks with quiet determination. Every small task she completed gave her a strange but growing sense of pride, a feeling she had never known while surrounded by wealth and luxury. Beezy noticed things she had never paid attention to before. She noticed the sweat on her hands after scrubbing a floor, the warmth of a home-cooked meal, the satisfaction of folding clothes neatly. She noticed Saada's patience and calm way of teaching her, never scolding, never mocking, just guiding. Beezy realized that the work Saad did every day required dedication, and she began to appreciate her friend in ways she had never before. Saad had always been quiet, always caring, but now Beezy could see the strength behind her patience and the wisdom behind her kindness. At first, Beezy still complained quietly to herself. Dusting the corners of rooms made her sneeze, sweeping the yard left her arms sore, cooking simple meals made her feel clumsy. But each day the complaints grew quieter, replaced by small acknowledgments of accomplishment. She realized that her discomfort was temporary and the lessons she was learning were lasting. She began to understand that life was not about comfort or status, but about effort and respect. One morning, Saad asked Beezy to help with the neighbor's garden. The neighbor, an elderly woman, had trouble tending to her plants and Saad often helped her. Beezy hesitated at first, unsure what to do, but she followed Saad outside. The sun was warm on her skin and the smell of fresh soil filled the air. She knelt to pull weeds, feeling the dirt under her nails, and carefully watered the plants. At first she thought the work was strange and difficult, but as she continued she began to feel something new. The plants looked brighter, healthier, and the woman smiled warmly at her efforts. For the first time, Beezy understood that helping others could bring genuine happiness, a feeling money had never given her. As she worked, Beezy also noticed how people responded to her differently now. At first, the neighbors had been cautious, unsure what to make of the former wealthy girl doing chores and helping others. But slowly they began to warm to her. The elderly woman thanked her sincerely for her work. The children in the street waved when she passed by. Beezy realized that respect was earned through effort and kindness, not purchased through wealth. This idea surprised her, but it was slowly becoming real in her heart. Beezy began to reflect on her past behavior. She thought about the friends she had lost, the people she had looked down upon, and the countless times she had assumed that money and beauty would make life easy. She remembered the way she had laughed at people who worked hard, assuming it was beneath her, and a deep shame filled her heart. She had never truly valued people for who they were, only for what they could do for her or how they reflected on her own status. The realization hurt, but it was necessary. One evening, as Beezy washed the dishes after dinner, she noticed how the warm water felt against her hands, how the soap suds slid smoothly over the plates. She remembered how she had never cared about such things before, how she had left cleaning to others without a thought. Now she took her time making sure every dish was clean and polished. She realized that taking care in small matters showed respect, not just for the work but for the people involved. She thought about Saad and the care she always put into her home, and she felt grateful and humbled. Beezy also began to appreciate the routines of daily life. Waking up early, preparing breakfast, cleaning the house, tending the laundry, and organizing the small garden became parts of her life she no longer resisted. Each task reminded her that effort had value, that care for others mattered, and that a simple life done well could be beautiful. She discovered that when she worked alongside Saad, she felt a sense of purpose that luxury had never given her. There were days when Beezy struggled. Some tasks were tiring, some mistakes embarrassed her, and some chores seemed endless. She dropped dishes, spilled water, and burned small portions of food. But each time, Saad gently guided her, encouraging her to try again. Beezy realized that making mistakes was part of learning, and she started to see failure not as shame, but as a chance to improve. She began to forgive herself and work harder, understanding that growth required patience. Slowly, Beezy's attitude toward life began to shift. She noticed the kindness of strangers, the effort of people around her, and the importance of listening and helping without expectation. She realized that she had once assumed the world owed her respect and attention, but now she understood that respect had to be earned through humility, effort, and sincerity. These ideas were new, but Beezy felt them taking root in her heart. Saad observed Beezy's change quietly. She noticed how Beezy's laughter became softer, more genuine, and how her gestures became more thoughtful. The pride that had once been sharp and distant was replaced with a quiet sense of responsibility. Saad felt proud not because she had taught Beezy but because Beezy had chosen to learn, to grow, and to see the world differently. One afternoon, Saad asked Beezy to go to the market with her to buy vegetables. Beezy had never done such errands before, always having people buy things for her. At first she felt clumsy, unsure how to handle money carefully, how to bargain with the sellers, or how to carry the items without dropping them. But Saad guided her patiently, teaching her simple ways to weigh goods, count money, and choose the best produce. Beezy realized how easy it had been for her to take such tasks for granted and how much she had underestimated the effort they required. Walking home with the market goods, Beezy felt a new sense of accomplishment. The vegetables were fresh, the money had been counted correctly, and the sellers had smiled at her politeness. She began to understand that simple actions, done well and with care, could create satisfaction and trust. She realized that life was not about rushing, appearances, or shortcuts, but about steady, thoughtful effort. That evening, as they prepared a simple meal together, Beezy noticed how Saad moved with confidence and grace. Every action was purposeful, every step careful, every gesture respectful. Beezy felt humbled. She realized that she had spent so many years thinking she was superior because of her wealth and beauty, but true strength came from character, patience, and kindness. She felt a deep sense of admiration for her friend, coupled with the shame of her own past ignorance. Over time, Beezy also began helping Saad in ways that required initiative. She noticed tasks that needed attention without being told, she organized small areas of the house, and she took care of small errands before Saad asked. Beezy realized that taking responsibility and thinking ahead made life smoother, and she felt satisfaction in being helpful without seeking praise. For the first time, she felt useful in a way that was not tied to money or appearance. Her reflection continued. Beezy thought about how she had treated servants, friends, and strangers before. She remembered the time she had laughed at people for working hard, assumed tasks were beneath her, or ignored advice. She felt a deep regret, but it was paired with a desire to change. She wanted to be better, not just for herself, but for the people around her and for Saad, who had always shown her kindness. Beezy began noticing small moments of joy in work. Folding clothes neatly, washing dishes until they gleamed, cooking a meal that tasted good, helping an elderly neighbor. Each small act became meaningful. She realized that she had once thought joy came from spending money, dressing well, or attending parties, but now she understood that true joy came from effort, care, and connection. Saad also taught Busy about patience. Not every task went smoothly and not every plan worked out. Sometimes vegetables spoiled, dishes broke, or laundry tore. But instead of giving up, Saad showed Busy how to handle mistakes calmly, repair what she could, and accept what could not be changed. Busy learned to take life slowly, to approach tasks thoughtfully, and to value perseverance over quick results. Through these days, Busy grew more aware of her own feelings. She felt pride without arrogance, satisfaction without show, and joy without expectation. She learned humility, recognizing that she had been wrong to assume the world owed her favor. She learned respect, understanding that every person's effort mattered and that kindness was not something to demand, but something to give. Busy also began to notice the respect people had for Saad. Neighbors greeted her warmly, vendors smiled, and friends trusted her. She understood that respect was built over time through consistent care, honesty, and reliability. Busy realized she had never truly understood this before. She had been surrounded by people who treated her well only because of wealth and appearance, not because of character. By the end of the month, Busy had changed in ways that surprised even herself. She moved through the house with confidence, handled tasks efficiently, and thought carefully about her actions. She no longer felt embarrassed when working or serving. She felt pride in effort, gratitude for guidance, and respect for life's simple lessons. She had begun to see Saad as an equal, a teacher, and a friend, rather than simply someone she had always known. Busy also noticed how her attitude toward people was changing. She listened more, complained less, and offered help without expecting anything in return. She began to understand that humility and respect were not signs of weakness, but of strength. She saw the value in honesty, patience, and consistent effort, and she realized that these qualities could never be bought, only learned and practiced. Evenings became times of reflection for Busy. She thought about her past life, the mistakes she had made, and the people she had taken for granted. She felt a mixture of shame and gratitude. She was ashamed of her past ignorance, but grateful for the chance to learn, grow, and rebuild herself. She realized that life had given her a rare opportunity, the chance to become a better person through humility and effort. Busy's change was not immediate and it was not perfect. She still stumbled, forgot tasks, or became tired and frustrated. But each mistake was now a lesson, each challenge an opportunity. She was learning that growth required patience, persistence, and a willingness to see life through new eyes. Saad watched quietly, offering guidance when needed, and celebrating small victories with Busy. She did not rush her friend, did not criticize harshly, and allowed Busy to discover the lessons herself. The transformation was gradual, but it was deep. Busy's pride was softening, her respect for others growing, and her understanding of life becoming richer and more meaningful. By the time another month passed, Busy's transformation was visible to everyone. She moved through her days with a calm purpose, treated others with kindness, and valued effort above appearance. She had learned humility, understanding the worth of small deeds and quiet strength. She had learned respect, seeing the value in people and their work. And most importantly, she had begun to see herself differently, not as someone entitled to everything, but as someone capable of learning, growing, and giving. Busy had changed, and in that change she discovered a new life, one that was richer than wealth, deeper than comfort, and more lasting than admiration. She understood that character, effort, and humility were treasures money could never buy, and she felt a quiet joy in knowing that she had finally begun to learn them. Busy had never imagined that life could be so quiet, so steady, and yet so full of lessons. The days at Sada's house had taught her more than she could have learned in years of luxury, parties, and attention. She had fallen, yes, but in the fall she had discovered the kind of strength that money could never give. She had discovered patience, humility, and the deep value of friendship. Her heart was full of gratitude, and each day she woke up with a renewed desire to live differently. She began her mornings early, the sun just rising over the small yard, the birds singing softly in the trees. She would stretch, breathe in the fresh air, and begin her chores. She swept the floors carefully, washed dishes slowly, and prepared breakfast with attention. It was simple work, but it grounded her. It reminded her that life was about small, consistent effort, and that even the tiniest tasks could carry meaning if done with care. Saad watched her quietly, offering gentle guidance when needed. Busy no longer felt embarrassed by the chores or the responsibility. Instead, she felt pride in her ability to contribute, to help, and to be useful. She remembered how she had once believed that work like this was beneath her. Now she realized that every act of care, no matter how small, required skill, attention, and patience. She had begun to see Saad not only as a friend but as a teacher, a role model, and someone she deeply admired. Bizi began to rebuild her life slowly, taking lessons from Saada's example. She started looking for small opportunities to work and earn honestly. She found that people respected her effort and sincerity more than her previous wealth. At first, it was difficult. She stumbled through simple tasks, made mistakes, and felt exhausted, but she persisted. She began to understand that success was not about speed, luxury, or attention, but about consistency, honesty, and patience. She also began to reconnect with the world differently. Where she had once assumed that people would treat her well because of her status, she now realized that kindness and respect had to be given before they could be received. She greeted neighbors politely, helped strangers without expecting anything in return, and listened carefully to the needs of others. Each small act of kindness taught her more than money or admiration ever had. Saad continued to guide her gently. She never pressured Bizi, never made her feel small, but allowed her to discover the lessons naturally. Bizi learned that asking for help was not a weakness but a strength. She learned that patience, effort, and humility could transform not only her life but her relationships. Slowly she started seeing the world with new eyes, noticing things she had never cared about before. The work behind a clean street, the effort of a vendor, the dedication of a teacher. One afternoon, Saad suggested that they work on a small project together. They decided to repair a corner of the garden that had been neglected. Bizi hesitated at first, thinking it was a minor and unimportant task. But Saad explained that even small work mattered, that attention to detail and care were signs of character. Bizi agreed and they worked side by side, digging, planting, and arranging. By the end of the day, the corner of the garden looked beautiful, and Bizi felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had never experienced a reward so simple yet so satisfying. As the days passed, Bizi began to take initiative. She noticed tasks that needed attention before Saad mentioned them. She organized meals, prepared clean spaces, and helped neighbors who were in need. She discovered that responsibility was not a burden but a path to self-respect. She felt a growing confidence in her abilities and a quiet pride that came from learning, growing, and being useful. Bizi also reflected on her past mistakes and the friends she had lost. She thought about how she had treated people, how she had assumed that wealth and beauty would protect her, and how she had undervalued those who cared for her without question. She felt regret, yes, but also a sense of understanding. She realized that the world did not owe her anything, and that true value came from character, effort, and care. With this new mindset, Bizi began to rebuild her life outside of Saada's home as well. She found small jobs, helped people in her community, and practiced honesty in every action. She discovered that people responded to her differently now, not because of wealth but because of sincerity, humility, and effort. She began to earn respect the right way, and it felt stronger and more meaningful than the admiration she had once known. She also focused on repairing her relationship with Saad. She no longer took her friend's kindness for granted. She thanked her often, listened carefully, and tried to share the work equally. Their friendship began to feel balanced for the first time. Bizi no longer assumed she could command attention or favors. Instead, she offered care, effort, and respect, and she realized that these acts of sincerity created a deeper bond than money or status ever could. One evening, as they sat together after finishing chores, Bizi looked at Saad and said quietly, "I don't know what I would have done without you. You showed me how to live, really live, not just exist in comfort." Saad smiled, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "We all learn in different ways, Bizi," she said. "You've worked hard and I am proud of you." Bizi felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had never experienced in her life of wealth. It was respect, gratitude, and true friendship all at once. Bizi also began to think about the meaning of wealth. She realized that money could disappear but lessons, character, and kindness stayed. She had once believed that wealth was the key to happiness, but now she understood that happiness came from effort, responsibility, and human connection. She valued small victories, small accomplishments, and small acts of kindness far more than any expensive possession. Over the following weeks, Bizi continued to rebuild herself. She learned to cook with care, clean with pride, and organize her life efficiently. She also discovered patience, understanding that results often came slowly and effort needed to be consistent. She began helping others, giving advice, and sharing lessons she had learned. Each act reinforced her new mindset and strengthened her sense of self. She also started planning for a future she had never imagined. She no longer aimed to be rich and admired. Instead, she aimed to be responsible, hardworking, and helpful. She saved small amounts, learned to budget, and understood the importance of earning honestly. Her goals became practical, grounded, and achievable, and for the first time she felt confident that she could build a stable and meaningful life. Beezy's change was visible to everyone around her. Neighbors, vendors, and friends noticed her humility, effort, and sincerity. They responded with respect, warmth, and trust. People who had once ignored her or treated her with distance now welcomed her presence, not because of money but because of character. Beezy realized that respect earned through honesty and effort was far more valuable than admiration gained through status. Through this transformation, Beezy also gained a deeper understanding of friendship. She saw how much Saad had given without asking for anything in return. She realized that true friendship was built on care, support, and loyalty, not favors or wealth. One morning, Beezy decided to help a young girl in the neighborhood with her schoolwork. The girl struggled with reading and Beezy offered to guide her. She discovered that teaching and helping others gave her a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced. She realized that her previous life had been empty in this way, and now she felt joy in contributing to someone else's growth. Beezy also began to understand gratitude in a new way. She was grateful for Saad, for the lessons learned through hardship, for the small comforts she had now, and for the ability to work and grow. She realized that gratitude was not just about saying thank you, but about seeing value in people, effort, and life itself. As time passed, Beezy felt a quiet confidence growing inside her. She no longer feared hardship or loss. She knew she could handle difficulties with patience, effort, and care. She understood that life would always have challenges, but she was now equipped to face them with humility and strength. She felt proud, not of wealth or status, but of her character, effort, and ability to grow. Saad and Beezy worked together, shared responsibilities, and supported each other. Their friendship, once unbalanced, was now strong, equal, and meaningful. They laughed together, helped neighbors together, and shared meals with care. Beezy no longer looked for admiration or luxury. She sought connection, effort, and sincerity. She had rebuilt her life, not just materially but morally, emotionally, and socially. One evening, as they finished washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen, Beezy looked at Saad and smiled. "I feel like I am seeing life clearly for the first time," she said. Saad nodded, understanding the depth of transformation in her friend. "You've grown, Beezy," she said. "Life has given you a lesson and you've learned it well." Beezy felt a warm peace in her heart, a peace that money or luxury could never bring. Beezy had learned humility, respect, patience, responsibility, and gratitude. She had learned to value effort, character, and friendship above all else. She had learned that life's richest rewards did not come from wealth or admiration, but from hard work, honesty, and meaningful relationships. She had been humbled, guided, and transformed, and she knew she would never forget these lessons. She also realized that she was now ready to face the world differently. She could pursue work, help others, and build her life with honesty and patience. She had learned the true meaning of success, one that could never be taken away by sudden loss or misfortune. She had rebuilt her confidence, her purpose, and her sense of self. Most importantly, Beezy had rebuilt her friendship with Saad. It was no longer based on dependency, admiration, or convenience. It was based on equality, mutual respect, care, and understanding. They laughed, worked, and shared life as partners, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating small victories together. Their friendship had transformed, stronger and more genuine than it had ever been. Beezy's life, once defined by luxury and comfort, was now defined by effort, kindness, and meaningful connections. She had learned that true richness came from character, not wealth, and that happiness came from sincere effort, not appearances. She had fallen, yes, but she had risen with wisdom, humility, and strength. And in that transformation, Beezy discovered the greatest lesson of all, that life's true treasures were not things to be bought, but lessons to be learned, kindness to be given, and friendships to be nurtured. She had lost much, but she had gained more: self-respect, wisdom, and a friendship stronger than anything money could ever offer. Beezy looked around the small, tidy home that had become her sanctuary. She smiled, realizing that she had come a long way. She had rebuilt her life with care, patience, and effort. She had embraced humility, respect, and gratitude. And most importantly, she had learned the meaning of true friendship, one that could survive loss, hardship, and change and grow stronger through love and effort. She knew her journey was not over, but she also knew she had the tools to face whatever came next. She had learned the value of work, the importance of character, and the power of sincere friendship. Life had given her a lesson, and she had taken it to heart. Beezy felt complete in a way she had never known before, and for the first time she felt truly at peace with herself and the world around her. Beezy had rebuilt her life, not with wealth or luxury, but with effort, honesty, and humility. She had learned that the richest life was one filled with meaning, connection, and care. And as she looked at Saad, her friend, guide, and equal, she knew that the future held promise, growth, and happiness rooted in the lessons she had learned and the bonds she had nurtured. Beezy's fall had been her greatest teacher, and her rise had been her own doing, guided by patience, wisdom, and the quiet strength of a true friend. She had learned that life's most important rewards were invisible, unpurchasable, and lasting. And in this understanding, Beezy felt a joy deeper than any luxury, a peace stronger than any admiration, and a gratitude that would stay with her forever. The days continued, each filled with effort, care, and reflection. Beezy no longer feared hardship because she understood the value of resilience. She no longer sought admiration because she had discovered the power of humility. She no longer measured herself by wealth or appearances because she had learned the meaning of character, respect, and sincerity. In the quiet evenings, when the sun dipped behind the small hills and the house was bathed in a golden light, Beezy would sit beside Saad, sharing stories, laughter, and plans for the future. They were no longer the unbalanced pair they had once been. They were friends in the truest sense, equal partners in life's journey, and bonded by lessons learned through experience, effort, and understanding. Beezy had learned to value every day, every task, every person, and every moment. She had rebuilt her life from loss to meaning, from dependence to independence, and from pride to humility. She had discovered that the greatest treasures of life were not possessions, but effort, honesty, care, and friendship. And in that discovery, Beezy knew she was finally free to live a life of purpose, gratitude, and love, alongside a friend who had never abandoned her and had taught her the most important lesson of all, that true wealth is found in the heart, not in the pocket, and true friendship is measured not by gifts, but by care, support, and equality. Beezy smiled, knowing that she had been humbled, guided, and transformed. She had lost everything, yet gained the world in understanding, character, and friendship. She had rebuilt her life, stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace the future with courage and grace. Her journey had taught her that no matter how high one rises or how deep one falls, the lessons of humility, respect, and care would always endure. And with Saad by her side, she knew that she would never face life alone again.